Welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Lens with your host, Jake. Scott is not able to join us today, but we're really excited to talk about a brand new craft distillery. We just talked about craft earlier this year, so sit back and buckle into the latest craft distillery that the Bourbon Lens chats about. I'm joined by Alex Buck, all things Warfield Distillery, but there's more going on than that. So Alex, thank you for spending a few minutes here with the Bourbon Lens tonight, and we talk a little bit about Warfield and your extensive history and all the things you do out there. So I appreciate you joining us tonight.
Yeah, super happy to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, it's exciting. Not many people have gone to Idaho, I feel like. The land of potatoes, we always think, but there's a lot more. There's blue turf in Boise. There's mountains. There's skiing. There's more potatoes, right?
Yeah.
So you got a lot going on. So, I think we start with the idea of we don't think about whiskey west of the Mississippi all that often. We should, but we don't. So how does a man in Idaho get started with whiskey?
Well, it really started because for me, my love for whiskeys kind of started in the UK. I was in Scotland. I was up in the mountains of Scotland. And for me, I was just tasting some whiskey. I was drinking from one of these, these rivers. And I thought, man, this is amazing. So when I came back to Idaho, for us, these mountains and the water here are just so incredible. Plus, we're a heavy barley region. We've got the Bellevue Triangle, which is where all of the barley grown for Budweiser and Coors. And so we have this high quality barley. We've got excellent water. And of course, you take those two together and you're like, well, let's see. How about an American single malt?
Yeah, and I will tell everyone right now, I told Alex offline, this is one hell of an American single malt. And my comparison is Daft Mill. If you've tried that, these compare really nicely. So not blowing smoke, this is a very, very tasty American single malt, and it gives you a lot of those Scotch characteristics. So we'll come back to that because there's more to the story than just the fact that you started an American single malt being in the triangle there. You also have a restaurant and a brewery. So, right, tell me a little bit about Alex and how you created this conglomerate in Ketchum, Idaho.
Sure. Yeah. It really started, my wife and I love food. We love booze, and my sister lived in England. And so it started because I love British bitters. I love cask ales. Across the pond, they have amazing ciders. And so it started really with cider and beer. And I made everything for our house. And my wife has an amazing palate. So she would always tell me if it was something was absolutely terrible. And then, once again, let's just assume that one could legally distill. I happen to just get in from beer and then realizing, hey, I can distill things too. And so when my wife and I, we had lived in California, kind of started brewing and doing things in the early 2000s. When my wife and I had twins, when they were 2 years old, we said we wanted to move to the mountains. In about 2013, we said, let's set off. We found Idaho. We found this beautiful place, and just so happened upon an amazing building on the corner of Sun Valley and Main Street. And that's where it all started. So we have this lovely restaurant. We made beer, we made distilled spirits, all on a really tiny little still. And everything was just sort of handmade. It would take me 2 weeks to make an entire barrel, a 53-gallon barrel. And so, yeah, that's pretty much how it started. It was just this love of making and trying to constantly improve upon what we were doing. And so that's really how it started.
Well, I think that's, it's the American dream, right? It's to bootstrap an idea and make it happen, right? And the American dream is still alive and well. We talk about like it's dead, but it's definitely alive for people willing to chase it. So I do like beer, and you 2014, like that's the peak craft beer movement is happening there, right? So what type of beers do you craft there in Ketchum? Because it seemed like we went through the IPA craze, and now we're coming back to that crisp Pilsner lager style beer here in America that people love to enjoy.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I'm sort of, I guess, saying the word Nazi on air is probably not appropriate, but it's like the soup Nazi from Seinfeld. It's one of those things where we were pretty rigid in what we were making. And so for us, the idea of making beer, I wanted to bring European styles. Those are the types of beers that I like. It's the same thing, like all of our distilled spirits are things that I like. And so we were making European styles. And in fact, it was 3 years maybe that we actually didn't make an IPA. We refused to make an IPA. I refused to make an IPA. So we made just European styles. So there were things like British bitters and Hefeweizens and Scottish ales, many ales. We made a magnanimous lager, but we just did not delve into the high hop. The hoppiest one that we ever did was called Lucky Seven. It was made with Idaho. It was actually called Experimental Number Seven, which then became Idaho Seven. And that was a British style IPA, which was like not even an IPA in American standards.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we did. That's sort of how we started. So that's and now, of course, with our head brewer Josh Strobel, who came from Colorado, we've got IPAs, we've got hazy IPAs. Truthfully, for him, he loves lagers, so lagers and pilsners.
I mean, Culture is the number one beer in the world now.
Exactly.
It repassed Modelo, and so it's there's something about a nice crisp beer when it's hot outside, when it's cold outside, after you've done yard work, after you've gotten an argument with your wife. A crisp beer's nice.
Yes, it is. And the reality is that the greatest way to test a brewery is to taste their lightest beer, because all your faults will come out. It's like tasting any of the spirits that you find. If you taste off flavors, there's something going on in that facility that is going to turn something. And so when you drink a crisp lager, I mean, you're going to be like, wow, you know what? This brewery knows what they're doing. And if you taste something off, you're like, well, what aren't they doing? Namely cleaning, but you know.
Well, it's the same thing goes for whiskey, right? A lot of people thinks like, hey, I need to try the barrel proof because that's where it's uncut, unfiltered. Well, actually, you can hide a lot in the proof because your palate's going to get buzzed out. It's really when you cut it down with water. If you look at most sensory panels, they're cutting it down to 40 ABV. And so they're drinking this at really low concentrations to find all those impurities.
Yeah.
And so I find it really interesting as the bourbon whiskey movement has gone to high proof hazmat style whiskeys. I feel like there's a way to hide imperfections in the fact that my palate can't always pick up 140 proof flavors.
Yeah, and that is absolutely true. And I think that in general, we like the whiskey you're drinking right now is at 94 proof. And, when we do our testing, we bring it down to around 30, 35 proof, sometimes even lower, just to see where impurities may lie on the total batch. But even while trying it, when we're distilling and we're making our cuts, we're rigorous in where we're testing and also to watering down. I always taste it at full strength, and then I start to bring it down just to see what types of nuances come through. But you're absolutely right. I think that it's, a lot of times people come to me like, oh, it's barrel strength. That's what I want. And I say, actually, what you want is to be able to taste it, because otherwise you're just burning your mouth. You're missing out on all of these nuances of this spirit that you could really taste if you added some water to it.
I think that's 100% correct. And, I enjoyed that whiskey so much. The whiskey has now disappeared. It's nothing but a fleeting memory at this point. I
I'll send
I
you
did
more.
Bless you. But I've moved on to smelling the gin, so I'm excited to talk about that because as a craft distillate, you can't just lay your hat on whiskey. You have to have a clear spirit. I feel like that kind of balances your whiskey production. You're talking about 2 weeks to produce one 53-gallon barrel where you can run clear spirits, you can tote those things up and then get them ready for bottling and get them out. So, right, you have a vodka and a gin portfolio. I guess you can't call it a vodka portfolio. It's a vodka that is stripped in red. You have a
Yeah.
gin portfolio of a botanical gin and an aged gin. I will tell you, I think this is a very flavorful gin. It's not a huge juniper bomb like a lot of them are. Obviously, it's got to have juniper in it. Like very citrus forward on this, very lively on the nose. So I like the nose of the gin. Haven't tried it yet, and that's why I was like, I should grab tonic. And then I realized I opened this and it doesn't have any bubbles. So not going to put that in there here in a minute.
Yeah, well, lucky for you, the gin is sort of gin for gin drinkers, but also for non-gin drinkers. It's basically there's so much to offer because once again, because we had a bar, I would constantly tweak the recipe to make sure that we had enough balance. And in particular, when you look at like making cocktails, initially I would say the evolution of this gin was that it was much more botanical forward. There wasn't as much juniper backbone. And so over time, what we did is we adjusted that juniper backbone so that it could stand up to cocktails. But what I found by doing so is that it lended itself to a very gin, but not necessarily London dry. So you still have, I don't know, maybe it's that it floats that middle ground. And so a lot of non-gin drinkers are like, oh my God, I love this. And then gin drinkers go, that's really interesting. I totally will drink this. And so great straight, like as in a martini, as like a 2-to-1 martini, I mean, I love it that way. Gimlets, fantastic, but I'm kind of old school in that respect. But yeah, it's a tasty beverage. And it also
It
won,
is.
let's see, this year it won best of class at the SIP competition, and then it got double gold at the San Francisco competition.
Well, you can't beat that. And I have, I might have had, really, I'd Canada Dry tonic water, but I really have the good stuff. I've got some Fever Tree that I just opened up. So after I, have a sip here, I'm going to put a little tonic water in there. Got to have a G&T to really feel like
Yes.
did it really hit?
Yes, absolutely. Well, and that it's interesting because typically what I do is I try through and vodka, like you said, it's vodka. Although our vodka is delicious. I mean, it's very easygoing. A lot of it stems from the water that we have here, which is just incredibly pure and obviously comes from our lovely Rocky Mountains. But we move through these things and people try the gin, and which of course you have next, which is our aged gin. And it's just I will be so curious to see when you do try the aged gin the differences between the two is pretty staggering. But what's crazy about them is that the fact that they are the same, what you'd call, I guess, mash bill, but botanical bill. So, we're a maceration method. We have a 210-gallon pot still that was made in Olympia, Washington back in 2014. And so we take whole botanicals crushed up. We put them in these baskets. We throw them in. We let them sit overnight for 24 hours. And then we distill on the botanical. And so it's very oily, like incredibly oily. But what's amazing is same one, and then you put it into barrel and it changes.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely interesting what a barrel influence will do to a gin. I will say it is the effervescence of the tonic with the gin is very nice. And I'm just having this straight up, like there's no ice involved in this, which obviously you would put ice in a G&T, but straight up, this is phenomenal. And
Thanks, I appreciate it.
I feel like, a good G&T you need to have good tea. If you don't have the tonic right, it doesn't matter how good your gin is, you got a bad cocktail. It's
Yes,
unbalanced.
that's true. It's all about balance, and I think that's one of the things, like I guess you could say, Warfield is known for, which is that we try to achieve as much balance as possible, across all spirits.
Yeah. So that leads me to, right, we've talked about the gin and obviously we teased the whiskey at the beginning, right?
Yes.
Um, Obviously you see this kind of happen, right? You were on the craft beer, like in the beer movement and the craft beer movement. Craft could mean a lot of different things, right? You have a restaurant. And so with that comes a bar program, right? So you got to have the ability to do that. And the star of the show obviously is the American Single Malt for later, but you also crafted something for your bar program. So as you think about how you balance costs and all of these things, you created the local. So walk us through like what the local is and how that complements not only just the bar program, but overall your distillation portfolio.
Sure, yeah. So when it comes to, obviously dealing with spirits and starting a new distillery, because obviously 2014 isn't that long ago, you look at coming in with vodka, you come in with gin, you can barrel age gin for 6 months and still get color and flavor. But when it comes to whiskey, age is always the king. One of the things that we did, particularly for our bar program, is that we used barrels. So same mash bill, we use a blend of 2 row and crystal malts for our whiskey, distilled 2 times on our 2 Forsyths copper pot stills. And what we ended up doing is just playing around with barrels because 70% of that flavor comes from barrels. So what we did for the local was, okay, we need this to be for a cocktail program. We know that it's going to be young. we know that it's going to have like just that teenage sort of, kind of like spunk that you're like, I don't know if I want you around, but okay, all right, I'll deal with you. I love you, but you're also a pain in my butt. And so, you take it, we put it into this, number char, char number 4, new American oak barrel. And that really just sort of mellows out some of those like tougher aspects of a new spirit. But one of the things I love about new spirit, especially like tasting it off the still, like when you get those hearts, it really does have this like tequila-esque flavor. So there's something lovely about it in that stage where it's between that 6 months and a year that you get that sort of tequila-esque flavor. You get this, the barrel flavor that's coming through with vanilla and some of that wood char and sugar. And so that's really why we did it, because we could release it fairly quickly, particularly as a new craft distillery, and we could get into our bar program pretty quickly.
Yeah. No, so that's great. And that leads us to, the American single malt, which obviously that's a new category, right? Like the way it's being shaped, the TTB came out, the rules and regulations. Did you start with American single malt because you wanted it to be different, or because you thought maybe I have a chance here versus like trying to lean into the crowded bourbon space? Like I feel like that's always a dichotomy for craft, is where do you start?
And that's, I mean, a fantastic question. It's, at the time we had this choice. We could make bourbon and go down that route and compete within a crowded bourbon space. And I would say that for the short-term benefit, maybe we would have seen, maybe some greater growth because we would have been able to maybe source something or release it earlier. But I think that for us, the way that we looked at it is that American single malt, in my mind, what I wanted to do is to take something that is Scottish in style, right? But really give it sort of that make it in America. We've got barley, we have access to great barrels, and so that's why we chose to do it. It was a conscious decision to say this is the long game, and we were really lucky that they made this change to the TTB, because for the longest time, we had to call ours American whiskey because we're technically a whiskey made with barley mash. Prior to the rule change. And that's a beautiful name. I mean, everybody wants to drink whiskey made with barley mash.
Rolls right off the tongue.
Exactly. So, and part of the reason, what was really interesting is we aged, the majority of our stock it's certified organic, because we're a certified organic handling facility. All of our spirits are certified organic. And we were aging in brand new we were aging in used cooperage. So usually bourbon, some sherry. And when we submitted this to the TTB, they said, "Well, what's your percentage of new make, charred oak?" And I said, "Like maybe 10%, we could call it." Well, that's not enough. So you'll have to be whiskey made with barley mash. So the changes were amazing, because I think that it's incredible for every single craft distillery to be able to sort of make their mark on what type of whiskey they're making and be able to use any barrels that they want to be able to craft something that is, once again, balanced based on what they like. So, at this stage for me, it's like we're working with used cooperage, we're working with char number 3, char number 4, different finishing barrels, all these kinds of things that allow us the freedom to kind of express what it is that, Idaho, for example, has to offer.
For sure. And like, we're waiting on the gin finished American single malt, just be the first.
Yeah. I'd, I'd be curious. I mean, we have a gin. We do have, I mean, the gin is finished actually in our whiskey barrels, but I've never done a flip side where we have the American single malt aged in. That's actually, we're trying to do a whiskey of the month club. That could be it right there. Jake, you've got it done.
So one of my favorite things, and you talked a little bit about this, and I don't know how public it is, but there's an independent bottler who you may have heard of here on the podcast and know very well. They did a rye finished in gin barrels. That works. Rabbit Hole obviously has done a rye finished in gin barrels. That works. I think your all's flavor profile, the vanilla and everything, kind of working with that citrus would really kind of make a pop. And so it'd really be cool after you do like 6 months aged gin, drop that in there for like 2 to 3 months. And boom, I think you're going to get a bomb of flavor.
That'd be incredible. Well, we're going to do it. It's on the list now.
Done.
We'll
All
call
right.
it Jake's American Single Malt aged in gin barrels.
I mean, you could just call it the Lens batch, and we'll be
We
good.
can absolutely done. That's easy.
Yeah, yeah.
I can put anything
We'll
I want
send
on those
people.
labels.
We'll send people right to your way. You let us know when that releases, and we will send everybody that we know possibly to go grab
Okay.
one.
Easy. It's a that's done.
All right, in and out. So since you went from, we skipped this a little bit, so I want to go back here. So you were doing on a really kind of small scale, 2 weeks to do a barrel. What's that production like now that you have two larger scale, four-size scale, just pot stills?
Yeah, so we initially started on a 210-gallon still made out of Olympia, Washington. And that was quite a chore to do. So, I mean, my God, it was crazy. So what we did is we were at the time wanting to expand. So we expanded from a 10 barrel brew house to a 30-barrel brew house. And so then we upsized our new stills. So now there are two four-size stills, a wash still, spirit still, that are approximately 1,000 gallons each. And so we distilled twice, and I sized the stills in particular. So if you know, when you, I should say, not if, when you come out to catch them, you will see our little tiny still. So the first still that we had, and we used these for our first whiskeys, the column is, I'm not kidding you, it's like 6 or 7 inches. It's like, I mean, it's the smallest little thing. And so it was incredibly oily, which was
Yeah.
awesome. And I remember I had this tasting event with Glenmorangie. And so
Mm.
the guy was in there talking about Glenmorangie and about how tall their stills are in Scotland. And he turns and he says, you could have, like, ours are really tall because it produces this wonderfully pure spirit. Macallan has the shortest stills in Scotland, kind of like this one right here, which is just real oily. And I was like, wow, you're in my distiller and you're talking about my still like it's not a big thing. And so when we went ahead and built our new stills, we sized them actually in between Glenmorangie and Macallan. So they're right in the middle. And I think that once again, we're looking at balance, and Forsyth makes their stills so they know exactly how tall they are.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, one of the craziest thing about Macallan is they just put in new stills, and they like took 3D renderings of the old stills that needed to be retired, and they could see the dings and the dents. And like when it talks about like foresight, like if you want pot still, I would go there. Like obviously I'm a
Yep.
Vendome guy through and through since it's based here in Louisville, Kentucky, but like Forsyth knows what they're doing because, Scotch is still very worldwide known. Maybe not
Yes.
here in America, but it is huge everywhere else. And they know what they're doing. So how many barrels can you all produce in a year if you just were to do dark spirits versus clear and dark?
So if for our dark spirits, we can do approximately 3,600 barrels, 53-gallon barrels a year at the current, at without any major changes, and that's running 24 hours a day. So we can produce a decent amount of spirits through that, and with very little change.
So that's awesome. So the question is palletization, rickhouse.
I mean, I'm a rickhouse kind of guy. I mean, that's sort of my preference, but we do a combination of both. So we have some in rick, we have some palletized, but the ideal situation is, I guess storage is always the biggest issue, right? It's really that always I would always go rick. I just feel like from an aging perspective, it just, I don't know. Maybe this is just like a gut feeling, but it seems like the right way to go.
See, I feel that way. Like I want to like love the rick house. I do love the rick house. I love the way it smells, all of that. But then like it's hard to convince me that you can't put more liquid in a top bung barrel straight up and down in a palletized rick house because you can run that thing to where it flows all the way up.
Yes.
And then, obviously as it evaporates, you're going to lose the toasted head. But like you're not always getting all the surface area of that barrel unless you're rotating barrels. So that's the thing about whiskey and aged spirits that I still feel like we've not truly figured out is how to get all the extraction that we possibly can out of the wood sugars because there's always a gap, there's always air, there's always something preventing a full filled barrel. It's called
Yes. Yeah.
evaporation in
No,
Mother
that's
Nature.
absolutely true. Yes, and I think that that's, it's one of the things in my mind, and I always tell this wherever we're doing tours here at the distillery. But I call it speed aging. because here we are in Idaho, low humidity, they have lots of temperature fluctuation. And so we had this like consistent interaction with barrel. And, they're angel shares, but they're my tears because I'm just like, man, I mean, I probably add like 5 to 10% humidity and just tears down at the rick house looking at the barrels. And I'm like, man, I know how much is coming out of you right now. But I think that's what lends itself to, what you're tasting right now, which is just that you're like, wow, okay, this thing seems like it's older than it is. But I agree with you that we've experimented with both. And I'm curious to see kind of if you were to taste them side by side, what you would notice, because there's something for me when I think about like grouping barrels together on top of each other and sort of the pressure that you get. I don't know. Like, I don't like enclosed spaces. I can't imagine my sweet barrels would like that either. You know what I mean? Like, you want to just have some space, just give me a little bit of room and then I will exactly stretch it out.
Let me
And here they are just like, exactly. And that's kind of what I wonder about. It's like, are these barrels feeling just, verklempt?
For sure. So you've been at this 11 years now, right? So like you've gone on this process. The question I have to ask as the Bourbon Lens, have you laid down a bourbon mash?
We have never laid down a bourbon mash. It's
Wow,
something I've
that's
always
impressive.
wanted to do. I know it's kind of like the IPA thing, just like not going to happen. It will happen. I think that in my mind, actually, I probably would lay down rye before I did a bourbon. But because we have an amazing rye, a lot of rye grown here, and that's something I would love to do because I love rye.
Yeah. Well, and so, I mean, I don't think anything's wrong with that. One, from a craft distillation perspective, you can put that out at 18, 24 months. You're not as committed to it. And, some of the best rye whiskeys I've had, like the Peerless 36-month rye, when they first put that out, was absolutely phenomenal. So as long as it's, affordable to the consumer, then, that's what you want.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think that's something that I think we would probably move into as far as with the rye. But I mean, there's no doubt from a distilling perspective and just me liking to make things, I would like to make a bourbon and I will make
Yeah.
one. I will. I promise I will make one day in my life.
It's just at least one run, right? And just let it just sit back in one of those, palletizations that you're like, it's tight, but we put it back
Yes.
there tight, so it's for a reason.
Yeah,
So it'll
and like for example, like I'm drinking right now, one of our it's technically 9 barrels, but it might be more like 18 because we had some carryover of a peated whiskey. And so that's what I'm drinking right now, which is one of our peated 4-year, and it's pretty sublime.
yeah. I mean, so, like, that's the one thing, as an American whiskey drinker, we had American single malts like Santa Fe Spirits and a Whiskey Del Bach that have, explored the mesquite smoke stuff. Obviously, you have McCarthy's, the grandfather of all American single malt, with peated, Washington peat, or Oregon peat. Oh, I don't know. Some Pacific Northwest.
Pete.
I can't, it's like, can't, I don't know where it is. Uh, if I thought about it longer, I would know where it is, but right now I just
Yeah.
don't care.
Yeah.
I love you, McCarthy's. Sorry. But like, we don't appreciate the vegetal note in America as much as the world does. And so that's one thing that I've forced myself to try peated expressions, because it's a note that American consumers don't truly understand.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the, for us, the first run that we did, I'd used a 50% blend of heavy peated and then our regular mash bill. So, this in my mind, my favorite peated whiskey is Litchik, which is made by the Tobermory Distillery on the Isle of Mull. Big, there we go. There's some shout out for those guys. I expect something from this Isle of Mull. And so the thing is, what I love about it's like this autumnal smoke. It's a light, but it adds sort of a sweetness. So you don't necessarily get as much of the vegetal that you would expect. There's something to it. And like I said, I'm going to send you mostly because you like the whiskey. And so anybody who likes my stuff, I'll just send them to them. So I'm going to send you some of the peated. I think you'll love it and we can chat about it, but I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
it's,
I'm always down for another conversation.
yeah, for sure. I'd love that too.
I've moved into the barrel aged gin. So You're right. It is completely different. This is Scott Dilly, who's my podcast partner in a gin, because it's cucumber. Like it is more of that like vegetable like crispness where like the other one was so citrus forward. This becomes more like a Hendrix style gin. And so I feel like I'm drinking a cucumber gin and tonic right now as I poured my tonic in here
Amazing,
to my
amazing.
drink.
Yeah,
So
it's pretty wild. It's wild what the barrel has done to that because I think it pulls out, at least from my profile, it tends to pull out, some of those also like the baking spices that you get because,
pepper,
we have
sage.
cardamom and yes, sage. We got sage in there, cardamom. I mean, there's these things that kind of come out from that barrel. And then I think that if with tonic in it, I mean, I'm sure that like even more flavors, explode out of that. You should try making like a Manhattan with that, and using like a lemon peel instead of an orange, but, you know,
I mean, it's kind
or
of
I should say old fashioned.
Thanksgiving-ish,
Yeah.
Thanksgiving-ish in a glass. I mean, there's a little cranberry in there, but like it's like if you got a fresh scoop of stuffing, boom.
Yeah. Perfect. That's
And
gonna be
so
the next cocktail.
my birthday may or may not fall near Thanksgiving once every 7 years.
Yeah.
My 16th and my 21st birthday were on Thanksgiving, actually. So
Nice.
it's not nice when you're 21 and you're at football practice and you got football practice the next day. No one wants to go out and have a drink when you're 21. And then
Yeah, that's
when you're
true.
16, the DMV's closed on Thursday. So you can't
Yeah,
go get
that's
your
true.
license.
Yeah. It's like
But
my
but
kids
now
are born on Halloween. Yeah.
yeah, now in Kentucky though, you can get your permit at 15. So we're changing laws and whatnot. But you know, when we go into these and you don't really know and you like we like hide the liquid for ourselves, um, because there's only like, this much in a 2-ounce sample, right? You don't want to try it beforehand. So like all these are live reactions and I don't drink a ton of gin, but like I like a nice change up. Like this has been like, especially with the tonic, it's the effervescence and the experience. It's almost like I want to try the whiskey tonic. I don't even know if that's, oh, I guess it's a highball. I think that would be a phenomenal highball. Like, I think all of your portfolio has a nice full characteristic, a full flavor. And that's what I want out of any spirit is can you hit layers of flavor? And you have layers of flavor in each of your spirits that you've created that I've tried.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Well, you'll try more.
Well, I'll reach out behind the scenes, but we also have this thing called our Patreon Tasting Club. And I think you would love this because it's 25-ish nerdy people from around the country where we send out samples, these folks, and we try whiskey live with you. And you get feedback from a consumer group that will tell you like, hey, I like this, I like that. And we actually have a lot of single malt drinkers, which, is great. So, if you're interested in that, we would love to have you,
Okay.
back for our Patreon Tasting Club and for anyone who wants to join patreon.com/bourbon lens. Love to have you. But, Alex, if you could make one pitch, this is a big thing, to come to
Yeah.
Ketchum, what would it be?
Man, I mean, are we talking selfish pitch? It'd be to
Yes,
see it'd
give me
be
your
to
elevator
see the
pitch to get me
distillery.
there.
It'd be to see the distillery on a snowy day, looking out at the Sun Valley ski area and the snow falling, the whiskey coming out of the stills and tasting hearts as they're coming out. Yeah, I mean it's magic.
See a press trip in my future.
Yeah, absolutely. We
Speak,
would treat
speak,
you well.
speak it into existence.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, Alex, I really appreciate it, man. Like, I love discovering new brands. Like, that is what we are about is discovering new brands, new to me. Obviously, you all haven't been doing this for a short period of time. You've been doing it for 11 years. Like, that's a long period of time for craft distillation. And I didn't know. Like, this is cool. Like, this is new and exciting for me. And so, everybody who's listening, stop what you're doing, go to warfielddistillery.com and look around. And if you can get there, great. If you can find where this is, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend getting the American Single Malt. It's very enjoyable. If you're a gin drinker, go for either of them. I think they're very nice. I don't normally do that, but I'm giving you kudos because I've enjoyed this portfolio all night long. And I just want to say thank you for sending us samples, and Colleen for setting this up. PR people are way underappreciated. So thank you for your PR team for that.
She's awesome. She's also my neighbor.
Well, shout out your neighbor.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, man, really appreciate it. Can people buy your spirits online? Is that allowed in Idaho?
Yes, it is. So they can actually go to drinkwarfield.com, and then we can ship to, I believe it's 47 states. And so, yeah, you can get all of our entire lineup out there. And then, come the new year, there's going to be even more stuff coming out. So look forward to that
Awesome.
myself. Yeah. I really
Hey,
appreciate you having
well,
me on the show.
hey, no, thank you. First of all, you're a great guest, but the spirits are phenomenal and they speak for themselves. So thank you for having us. And thank you everyone for joining this episode of the Bourbon Lens. We'll catch you next time. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Jake. Cheers.